Welcome, my child, to a garden, to a world built just for you. But whether you shall find it a paradise or a prison, that is for you to decide. The Talos Principle is a first-person puzzle-solving game where you take on the role of a voiceless robot who has been placed in an enormous labyrinth filled with various puzzles and contraptions. Your only instruction comes from a voice in the sky who tells you that solving all of the puzzles will grant you everlasting life. From there, you'll make your way through the various levels, solving puzzles and progressing inevitably towards your final grand reward. The gameplay of Talos Principle is fairly easy to explain. The world is divided into multiple different levels, each one with its own specific visual theme. Each section has 7 levels, and each level has around 3 to 5 puzzles for you to solve. Once you've completed a puzzle, you'll be rewarded with a Tetris block key, and collecting enough of these blocks allows you to open gates that lead to new areas. In addition to these special keys, each level will also include a number of secrets and Easter eggs for those with the skill and patience to find them. Now, one of the best things about the Talos Principle is that it has a wide variety of puzzles for you to solve, combined with a very strong difficulty curve. In the beginning, your simple objective will be to use switches or jammers to get around walls or hostile environmental objects. Failure is possible, but since reloads are so quick, there's minimal frustration. Then, after you've solved enough of the early puzzles, you'll unlock special equipment, which in turn opens up harder levels. As you move along into harder levels, you'll need to master the use of boxes and controllable energy beams. Eventually, the harder puzzles will require you to take into account the level's geometry and manipulate objects in 3 and even possibly 4 dimensions. Now, what's impressive about all this is that the Talos Principle has very little tutorialization. There are no instructions or explanations. There are occasionally hints, but they're often quite vague. In fact, the text that you do find has very little to do with the levels themselves. You see, as you explore, you will occasionally find messages and sometimes terminals that contain information about the Talos Principle's meta-narrative. These take the form of excerpts from historical or philosophical texts, as well as quotes from other individuals who have also tried to solve the puzzles. Admittedly, it's a little pretentious for a game about collecting magical floating Tetris blocks, but in its defense, you don't have to interact with these terminals and can just speedrun through the levels if that's what you desire. Now, if I had one complaint about the Talos Principle, it would be that the game has kind of a sticky movement system. You see, when you move objects around in the environment, they tend to snap to other objects. What this means is that stacking items on top of each other is actually fairly easy, while placing them side by side is a bit more difficult. In addition, this stickiness also applies to your movement in the game, with a special prompt showing up when you can jump on top of things. The downside here being that when these prompts don't show up, you're uncertain as to when and where you can explore. And this can be frustrating, since in order to get some of the secrets in a level, you'll have to do things which in any other game would be sequence breaking. Ultimately, I would give the Talos Principle 4 out of 4 stars, and my recommendation. The narrative may or may not click with you, but even if it doesn't, it still has an excellent selection of puzzles to challenge your brain. Well then, thanks for watching, and I promise I'll try not to be as cryptic as those other guys.